You're watching Byline Wilmington on CBS 10 WILM. Here's your host, Don Ansell.
Thank you for staying with us. Our final guest on this special Byline Election 2010 is the Republican candidate for the New Hanover County District 9 State Senate seat, Mr. Tom Goolsby. Mr. Goolsby, Tom, good to see you.
Don, it's great to be with you.
Appreciate you coming in.
Sure.
So I've been asking everybody that's running about how you think your campaign is doing now in terms of the election.
It's doing well. All of our polls show us about 20 points or so ahead. Both the polls the Republican Party has done, Civitas has done, and so
20 points is like...
It's a lot, but we're leaving absolutely nothing to chance. I'm working hard all the way through.
Do you believe those polls?
Well, they were accurate in the primary election, and they're done by Telepinion Research out of Washington, D.C., so they were accurate then. I believe them to be accurate now.
You have focused a lot on the issue of North Carolina having a bloated state budget. Mm-hmm. I think it's, I went online and checked it out. It's like $19 billion, and it's quite something to digest and try to metabolize. But the spending for the fiscal year is $19 billion. Mm-hmm. It's approximately 3% less than last year, I believe. Give us what you think a state spending figure should be, and what specifically what you would cut that would have a major impact. And just let me say that with education being 60% and human services being 20 to 25%, well,
sure. The hardest problem we have right now, Don, is just, you're talking about a bloated state budget, just so folks understand. North Carolina state spending adjusted for inflation per person has gone up 85% in the last 30 years. Adjusted for inflation per person has gone up 85%. Now that's incredible. Nothing else has grown like that except maybe the federal budget. But as far as spending goes, it's been completely out of control. And the problem we have with our budget is you can't even read it. You cannot understand it. The Democrat leadership presents it and gives an up or down vote after, last year it was 2 hours. The year before it was actually 20 minutes.
Well, I did read it actually, and it is
extremely hard to understand.
But do you think that a detailed state budget could be less detailed?
Well,
wouldn't you say it's not transparent if it is?
Well, here's what our ideas as Republicans are: is we need a zero-based budget. The same way you balance your budget at home, all of our viewers balance their budgets. You prioritize the state budget.
Your opponent says no state. That's unrealistic. No state in the entire country budgets like that because it's not possible.
Okay, that's ridiculous. We all budget that way.
But states don't. That's what he says.
Well, I understand that that's where he comes from, and if that's his belief system, good for him.
So you think North Carolina could be the only state that could do that?
I know we can zero-based budget. I mean, we all do. It's ridiculous not to. It's a 2-page bill, Senate Bill 202, and it basically calls for all the state departments to show the General Assembly, here's what we are doing. I mean, think of all the different things that are just duplicative services across the board. First off, every state department puts forward its budget. They then line items show you what constitutionally or regulatory-wise they are doing and required to do by statute. That then allows us as the General Assembly to prioritize our spending. First, with education, the courts, health care, and we go on down the line. When we look at what the things we're doing that we have to do, the things that are necessary, constitutional, and required, those are what we begin funding in priority. And then when we run out of money, we stop. And the first thing we do with the Taxpayer Protection Act across the board is we take the first 10% and we put it in the rainy day fund.
$19 billion is the
budget. Well, add in the federal spending too. Don't forget that. It gets us up over $20 billion.
What do you think it should be? Give me I don't care where it goes. What do you think?
Well, first off, we have to see what our state receipts are. They continue to overestimate what state receipts are coming in. We have to look at what our state, what we can realistically bring in.
So you couldn't give me a figure until you see that, until you know what.
Well, nobody can give you a figure until we have it. I mean, but the fact of the matter is...
Well, you know they're going to have a $3 billion deficit.
Well, they told us that before, and it ended up being twice what they told us. I think the deficit is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of probably $5 billion or more.
Okay, How do you save $5 billion off that $19 billion budget?
Yes, well, we do even more than that. First off, we want to get rid of the North Carolina corporate income tax by ending incentives across the board.
And that will-
incentives equal the corporate income tax. The best incentive for any business, whether it's here at ILM, anyone, you own private businesses, whatever, is no corporate income tax, because that's just passed right along to the consumer. We want North Carolina to be a tax-friendly state, not the 41st highest tax state in the country.
By the
We
way,
want to
you
build
and your opponent
jobs
are
here.
on the same page, according to him.
Well, his party's not. I mean, he may say that. You know, the Democrats have gotten elected time and time again saying that. They've not proved that by their actions.
Do you think education should be cut?
I think education needs to be funded adequately. Now, the things we can do to help with costs in education. Okay, first off, we can give tuition tax credits to each family, $2,500 to each family. That was a Republican bill put up this last go-round. Didn't even get the time of day. Think about that, Don. You've got $7,500 is what we're told by the state. I think it's a good bit more. $7,500 per child that's spent in North Carolina. If you give $2,500 to a family to take their child and either educate them at home or in a private setting, a Christian school, a religious school, parochial school, whatever it might be.
So you want to cut public funding, basically, and
talking
give it
about-
to the switch that over to a...
We're not talking about cutting the
an
funding.
open
We're
season.
talking about then if we take that child out of the system where we don't have to provide the school and all the other things for them, that leaves that other $5,000 in the system to take care of all the needs that continue
So
to
you
expand.
would give
there.
parents like a check to give their children
Yeah, it's called their own money.
alternative education?
Yeah, it's called their own money. Democrats like to say, "Oh, well, it's our money before the state takes it
So
from us.
you'd
We earn
reduce
it."
taxes for parents to do that
A
chose to
tuition
give
tax
their-
credit, absolutely. The other thing is we need to get rid of the cap on charter schools. People need to understand charter schools are non-government run public schools. They're popular in the inner cities. They're popular over in places like Brunswick County. We have the Roger Bacon Academy. They're popular here in Wilmington. We have a cap on it. We need to get rid of that. Now, my opponent says, yeah, he's for that too. Well, his party's not. The only reason we have charter schools is because the Republicans, for that short time they were in charge in the House, got it forward, but the Democrats, to pass it, limited it to 100 schools.
So you talk about, and the Republicans are talking about cutting taxes as a way to stimulate the economy.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's a big debate right now.
Well, no, it's not a debate right now, Don. Everybody says that to get elected. The problem, I hear it across the board. I go to these forums, I hear all the Democrats, oh yeah, we need to cut the budget, cut the fat. Everybody believes in cutting the fat. Nobody doesn't. They say that every election cycle. Then they go to Raleigh and they do the exact opposite. And the North Carolina people are sick and tired of being lied to and told one story at election time and another story when they get to Raleigh.
If the Bush tax cuts were the answer, or because they're still in place, and they have been in place, why haven't they stimulated this economy after the fall, so to speak?
Well, the fall was predicated, of course, by extremely bad economic policies with the housing market. I mean, if you're talking about what we saw with the Reagan tax cuts, what we saw with our economy after the Bush tax cuts,
but
the way it took
they've been
off.
in place since then.
Sure, and now the Democrat answer is to get rid of them and tax us even
But
more.
why
Yeah.
didn't it stimulate the economy over the last 2 years?
Well, because we had the housing market fall. But prior to that,
Will that make
my
it-
gosh,
no,
we
will-
had continued economic growth up until the housing market fell.
Will that stimulate the housing market?
Well, what we need to do is, in North Carolina, I can't address those federal problems. You can talk to Ilario. He's got the answers
He'll
on
be
that. Yeah, and he's going to be our next congressman. But when we deal with the issues at the state level, the way we're going to stimulate North Carolina, as opposed to the other 50 states, is not being the 41st highest tax state, but the #1 lowest tax state. That's why people will come here and do business. They won't come here.
Did you support the quarter-cent sales tax
Absolutely
increase
not.
the county implemented with the referendum?
No. And what did they do? Right after they passed it, they soon turned around and increased property taxes. You can't ever give government enough money.
4 of the 5 are Republicans on that board.
I'm telling you what I'm going to do when I get to the General Assembly, and it will not be raising taxes.
I'm curious why, and I've asked your opponent the same question, why you think it passed if the majority of voters are so anti-tax increases in
I will tell you
County?
exactly what I heard from people. They said, I have to vote, that we need to vote for this so we don't get our property taxes increased. That's what people were saying. They did not realize the politicians are going to turn right around. I was never for it at all. I don't trust politicians to increase taxes ever, because that's just a foot in the door.
Republicans or Democrats?
Anybody.
Okay. Do you think the public today thinks we should never again raise taxes? And do you think that?
the taxes are way too high across the board. No, government does not need more money. The problem with our economy isn't that government doesn't have enough money, it's that they have too much.
That's it. So how, I mean, you think never again should we have any tax increases?
I cannot imagine a reason to increase people's taxes.
Ever?
I can't. I cannot. Government has way too much money at this point. Our budget, Don, again, 85% adjusted for inflation per person in 30 years. If that keeps going, I mean, it is confiscatory at this point, and we have got to get government and spending under control and get government back to literally its constitutional requirements. We have got to prioritize, reduce the size of government significantly in this state, the way it was.
Let me get some quick takes on a few issues.
Sure.
Whether you support or oppose. Involuntary annexation. Do you
Opposed completely to involuntary annexation.
the megaport in Southport?
I don't think we can afford that right now.
Titan Cement.
I am opposed to it as it currently stands with the taxpayer money going to it. Now again, if they comport with the environmental laws and all, I mean, they comport with the environmental laws.
Offshore drilling.
Only if it can be done safely.
That's a pretty
Yeah.
safe answer.
Now I would like to look at.
I'm sure the people,
Sure.
they were saying, oh, it's safe. BP guaranteed it was safe.
No, the government guaranteed it was safe. The government watchdogs were not doing their job.
It was relying on BP's analysis.
Well, and
what
relying
they
on the
submitted.
government, quote, inspectors that never did their jobs.
We're almost out of time. Skyway Superbridge.
Can't afford that.
The Republican majority on both sides of the river, the commission, all Republican Brunswick County, 4 out of 5, have voted to support that. You would
Good for them.
You would fight against them and sit at a table with them and tell them, I'm not going to support that.
We cannot afford that right now. Now, if we need a new bridge, we need a new bridge. We need a bridge that's inexpensive that we can afford. 1 out of every 5 bridges in North Carolina is in serious need of repair. We got to deal with maintenance first before we start looking at building super bridges.
We're out of time.
Okay.
Tom
Don,
Goolsby, thank you for joining us.
always a pleasure, my friend.
Next week, same time, McIntyre and Pantano square off. Don't miss that one. I'm Don Ansell for Byline Wilmington. Have a great week.
You've been watching Byline Wilmington on CBS 10 WILM. Join us every Sunday morning as we explore the issues that concern you.